Nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause on all 3 pages of this disclaimer and read it. Hey everybody, Nick Petruzzello, and it's Wednesday the 8th at about 6 p.m. Trading Markets and Crypto Zoom call. It's for the Brotherhood of Ancestral Masculinity, and we're here. We're going to talk a little bit about trading. In fact, I was having a discussion with the guest here just before we got started about options, about trading, about dabbling in recent markets, and it has certainly been tricky. So you were telling me how you were trying to trade the markets, the options market recently, and kind of having a hard time being profitable in recent days. Is that what's going on for you?
Hard time making an entry. I'm in some positions, waiting them out on basic short calls and short puts. Not playing with spreads over any long period of time, and then dabbled in a little bit of zero DTE stuff and kind of breaking even with that. A little bit ahead.
Gotcha. So basically, your account is rotating around the same number, basically.
Yeah, just holding on some conservative short calls and puts.
Okay,
Don't,
I mean that's
yeah.
that's good. Might pay you off over time. So what I do is I teach people how to trade, and the things that I teach would apply to options. Certainly, if you are going to try to predict the future of price, even on a short or long term. So one thing I've noticed, not that we have a ton of options traders, we're more of a futures type group. I'm a forex futures trader. I got my start trading actually silver on margin, gosh, 16 years ago. But I really got into crypto in 2017. It's a great time to get into crypto. And of course, if you just went long back then and had a pulse, you won. But I learned how to optimize that. And I went into futures in the cryptoverse. And I learned that Forex futures are actually a bit more predictable and less scammy. So I moved over to Forex futures. I know people who are really tempting me to get into the indices, futures for indices. So, well, I did play credit spreads like we were talking about. So I have played in the options market, but strictly with the credit spreads. And the thing I like about the futures market is I don't have to know about, Vanna and, Gamma and all these different Greeks, right? I know you can trade
Mhm.
options without the Greeks. So, if I'm talking over your head, whoever's watching, don't let it bother you. We're not going to talk too deeply into this conversation. We're going to talk more about what it takes to learn how to trade and whether it's in options or crypto or stocks or futures or indices, anything that you want to do in trading, there is there's certainly a methodology. There's more than one way to learn. But like with most things, hiring a coach is going to cut a long time off the process. And in fact, hiring a coach with trading, such as myself, is probably going to make the difference of success or not success for, I'd say, 90% of successful people probably have hired a coach at some point. I hired a coach. I didn't need a coach during crypto. That was easy, and I have a mind for it. And I have a background also in that whole thing, math, economics, and such. But trading Forex is another animal altogether. And so I actually paid thousands of dollars and hired a coach. And although I don't really use that coach's method in trading per se, that method was helpful. And a lot of, some aspects of that method go into my trading. But that particular coach traded using pure price action, supports resistances, candle theory, old school. And I use I use that for sure, but I also use algorithms based on indicators and a little bit of quant data. So very, very long story short, like those little tabs you see on the screen, that's my work, right? And it's just little bits of price going down, and I grab a little bit of profit out. And even though it's not the big move, I still will pull a bit of money out of that. Now, some of these actually pay a lot better than others. Like these 4 are massive winners. These 2 are probably losers. This one's a massive win, but probably unable to take it because it was a news event, but still pretty big win. Obviously, this one's a massive winner. So, this algo does pay pretty well, but it's not as easy as it looks. I could give you my algo and you'll probably fail because trading is like a 3-legged table. There's the methodology, there's the psychology, and there's treating it like a business. Now, treating it like a business is something you can learn from a book. It's not really that complex. The psychology is really something that is gonna only come with a certain kind of practice. And basically that practice is building an algorithm, if you ask me. Trading psychology, it's fear and greed, and it's really what makes or breaks every single trader. Every trader that fails, 100% of them fail because of psychology. And the reason reason I say that is because they quit. They were broken. The market broke them. And there are little moments in trading of fear and greed that power the psychology. And basically what we teach is a way to remove that from the equation as much as possible. And if you're coding your algorithm, letting it trade for you, then of course it's removed almost completely. You are left to turn it on and turn it off. And long story short, that's what we do. So you can see this algo is pretty good. The first couple you saw in there didn't look that great, but this one's pretty good. And I use an even better algo at this time. So a lot of people who want to trade, they want to like make money really fast. I don't recommend that. Do you have a degree, Ken?
Yeah, engineering.
So how many years did that take?
4.
The average person who learns to trade without hiring a coach takes them 4 years to be profitable. And that's the traders who are profitable. That doesn't count the 90 some odd percent who fail, right? So it takes them 4 years. You hire a coach, that could cut it down to less than a year. In fact, Larry, who is one of the band members, it took him like a handful of weeks to build his algo. He really dug deep, but it's taken him a number of months, of course, to, refine it, trade it, refine it, get his psychology where it needs to be. And now he is able to trade profitably. So people can do it within a year. He did have some experience trading though from another group. So he wasn't going from scratch, and neither would you be. And while I'm not giving you a sales pitch, what I am saying is that just like weightlifting or just about anything else, hiring a coach is what's going to be probably the difference between success and failure. And even if you succeed without a coach, it's going to cut that time frame down by years. And years of trading could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, depending on the size of your input, right? So that's the kind of the thing. Our traders are told that they need to put aside at least 3 hours a week. Like being an engineer, you're talking about 10 hours a week, if just for class alone, if not more, maybe 15 hours a week of class, that much more of study. And, you're going to get out. And as an engineer, I mean, it takes a while, but you can get up to a nice sum of money. I mean, I got a buddy who's an engineer. He's a lead, making like 400 grand a year. And that's pretty good money. And it took him 15 years to get to that level. He didn't start out making that much, but you can start out, I think, 6 figures nowadays, depending on which type of engineering you do. If you want to go to Kimberly Clark designing bathroom paper towel hangers, then maybe not so much. But that said, even that degree is going to take you 4 years. Trading, you apply 5-10 hours a week. If you really, really want to, you can knock it out within a year. And then it's going to take you another, 6 months to a year of forward testing and building everything. But within a couple of years, you can have a profit engine. That's why people trade. And that's why they come to me. The thing is I don't really push my company that hard because I trade. So that's where the income really comes from, right? So that's just kind of a discussion around, I've been trading and I'm not really making any money. Like, I have found even with my clients, there's a large percentage of them who they just they sign up, they want to get the insight that we provide. Like, we talk about the markets. I talk about where I think things are going. I post my trades. So people are paying $100 a month just to see those things without really applying themselves and building their own trading, right? And then what they do is, even though they have perfectly good information for trading, they fail because they haven't developed the psychological aspect of trading. I have like 4 traders that are profitable. I have something like, 70 people in the group. You know what I mean? It's really actually kind of remarkable. A lot of them are not there to trade. So 3 hours a week, we tell them. So if you're studying for 3 hours a week and you have the right coach, you could get it done within a year, probably. If you don't have a coach and you're just kind of feeling your way through it, you could be profitable, but that didn't. I mean, it worked for me for a while and then it didn't. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't a very good trader. I was a lucky trader in a way until I actually applied myself. So futures to me is a good market though. You're in options. So option values change over time because of things like volatility, all the Greeks, right? All the implied volatility and all these things. And as quote unquote smart of a guy as I may be, I just never took the time to learn that stuff. Futures to me is simple. You can use the data on the screen to determine where price is going to go up or down. For example, right here, this move yesterday, this move up was a bit lucky. That Trump business where he did the announcement, but I think I had a take profit right here And at the very last minute, it was pretty crazy. The announcement came through and the market flipped out. So I had been in this trade, it was nicely in a profit. I got a breakout on this. So I believe I was in about here. I think my stop loss was like, down here probably. I forget where it was. It was better than that. I think the stop loss was here. And I'm in it and I'm profitable. And all of a sudden the market just goes cattywampus. And, it turns out Trump made his announcement and bam, took it right up to profit. And in fact, it had gone almost all the way there prior to his announcement, jacked down, knocked a ton of people out of their trades, and then rocketed up. This is the kind of things that happen like when you're trading, right? But that was a win where I actually had put my trade up. I said, I'm going to do this. I actually, in the morning during our private live lab, I scouted this trade out. So hours and hours before, I actually entered the trade. And then as the conditions arose, I entered the trade. And I told everybody at Algo Factory that I entered the trade. And then we just kind of tracked it through the rest of the day. You saw the breakout, saw the way it was behaving during the breakout, which was encouraging. There were some key things that showed that it was going to continue up. And then, had this nice pop up right there. I was tempted to take profit right here when it popped up in a big way. A lot of times if the market gives you a gift, you take it. But I'm like, no, that's not the plan. Now, I do have a rule where I can take profit up to 85% to my take profit, right? So from, 85% of that move, I can actually take profit and be within my rules because everything I do is rules based because I trade algorithmically. But you can see my major algo called that big move. Of course, we didn't know it was going to be that big of a move, but still, it was a big move prior to the Trump announcement. It called this move up just like that. So, and then that's my major algo. And then this is the one that I showed you before, also calling it, but obviously the major algo really getting that bottom in there. I just built that like last week, actually. I think I built it Monday or Tuesday. Monday, I built this. I went a little spurgish and just built that. So at any rate, building algos is very doable now with AI. I used to try to code with AI and it was my coder who writes my algos, who wrote the first one I showed you. He was like, yeah, this thing codes like it's drunk. And then nowadays, not so much. I mean, it really can do a lot. And TradingView just came up with a whole new AI like assistant. So you can log into it and you can literally ask it to like recode you can see how much work I did yesterday as I'm scrolling, I'm asking it for profit projections, back testing. Now, excuse me, I wouldn't rely on their back tester. I would back test, and there's a lot of reasons for that are technical, but you can tell it's like, okay, I want to have you test whether or not this is profitable with a 1-to-1 risk to reward ratio with 2 ATRs, 2-to-1, a whole, give it like a bunch of options and it will go back test for you and tell you which one of those is the most profitable. Again, I wouldn't trust the numbers just yet without testing them. The last time I used their auto back tester, it just simply didn't work very well. The numbers were way off. That was a long time ago. And so, and I prefer to back test manually because that helps with the psychology of things. But, still this tool, I just played with it yesterday for hours or Monday for hours. And I was looking to build a different algo and I just so popped up that this one came out and I tested it manually. I'm like, wow, this is pretty good. And I started trading it and it was profitable off the bat with very, small amounts of test money. So at any rate, that's what I do. It's the trading. So, Ken, that was a bit of a rant on my part. I know you didn't really come with a whole lot. So do you have any questions so far, or should I just kind of talk about what I think the markets are going to do?
Just real quick, I got TradingView. I think I'm plus level. Is that AI? I saw that AI announcement the other day with that tool. Is it at what level are you to be able to get that? Or
I believe I'm pro.
pro? Okay.
Let me see.
Let's see.
I forget what my
Your premium, it looks like.
I'm premium, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's like, I don't know, $1,000 a year. But I actually wait for the sale and I usually am
Oh,
able
yeah.
to get like 70% off.
Right. Yep. For sure. Okay. Yeah. So Meta also had an AI tool come out today. Also, it's where their stock rocketed a bit.
Yeah, it's, AI is what's for dinner, right? It's the new thing.
Hmm.
Some of it's good. I'm impressed with certain capabilities, right? Like depending on what we're talking about. If you're talking about video production or refining your AI trading tool, like that's great. There are some other tools where I'm not quite as impressed, but I use it. I use it all the time.
Okay. I don't know without really seeing. I'm not a like said, not a futures guy and definitely not a forex person. So yeah, if you want to talk about your sentiment with what's going on, that would be interesting to hear as well.
Well, sure. Even an options chart is going to reflect what's happening in the spot or futures market, right? Like it's all based
Hmm.
on the same chart. So me telling you what I think is going to happen is going to be effective in both scenarios.
Right.
So I think this is what I drew this morning. Just a couple of different paths. It was really difficult to try to predict like what the Nasdaq's going to do, just because it's very politically affected right now. I tend not
Hmm.
to trade on days like today after such massive news. I might scalp, pull out a little bit of money, but until the smoke clears, like a good 48 hours after a major announcement like the ceasefire, I'd be real careful with that. And that's why you say, oh, it could go up, it could go, yeah, it could do this, could do that. But I did assume that it would kind of hug the top. This is the Nasdaq, by the way, guys. Sorry, I didn't say anything. I assumed at the time that the Nasdaq would kind of hug the top of this range. And now I'm going to back out of this chart, go to a higher time frame, and you'll see the Nasdaq was ranging, going all the way back to like February, back and forth between about 24,300 and 25,236. So of course, I did predict, and this is all public. Receipts are online. I predicted that it was going to drop. It was being held up by Trump announcements and this and that and the other, but I had predicted that the Nasdaq was vulnerable going back for a couple of months, and that's just
Hmm.
because the algorithms that I look at and build said so, right? And it all made sense in a lot of different ways. And so yeah, it dropped, and this level that it came to was just above this lower level, and that lower level is the level that it, let's just say, wanted to go through, or to go to, I should say, or through. We don't really know. But what happened was Trump came in. He made some announcement earlier in the day, as he almost always does on a Monday, to try to keep, and this is last week, to try to keep the markets from going down. It didn't have much effect. And so he sent out a message the few hours later saying, okay, we don't need Hormuz to be open to stop this war. And then he said regime change has occurred, which is a very ambiguous thing to say because, I mean, what country? Like, who are you talking about? Yeah. Did you do it? Did they do it? Are we talking about like some African country? Like, so long story short, they made some announcements that made it seem like the war was going to end, and the market came up. And then, of course, later in the week, he says, we're going to blow you back to Stone Age and all this crazy talk. And then, it did hold up though, because I think the market's starting to realize how he works. And what he does is he makes some bellicose announcement on a Friday, and it's usually after the market close. Monday, Sunday futures and Monday spot markets open down. Usually they gap down because they're scared. And then sometime in the day, he makes a dovish announcement, and it goes up, and it's all very manipulative. And so
Yeah.
this move yesterday corresponds with that trade that I took, and it went up on its own after farther than I thought it would go because of the announcement, right? So he said yesterday that there's a ceasefire, right? Well, the ceasefire is unraveling, and the geopolitics of the matter actually they do matter. The market kind of tells you a little bit though that it might not be as bad as it all seems in a way, but the ceasefire still has yet to be like there's a negotiation behind it. Iran has what they want, US has what we want. But the fact that they're even willing to talk about it is a really good sign. So the market got very happy about it. In the end, though, it hasn't happened. No agreements have been made, and now Israel is doing things to basically sabotage that ceasefire. And so that move has stalled, but it hasn't gone down yet. So if we start to see like hostilities in a big way, if the ceasefire completely falls apart, then we could see this head back down, right? The Nasdaq can head back down to what's probably going to be like near term around the 24,300 level. It's just kind of the bottom of where all of these spots hit, right? So that's,
Hmm.
basically it, where it'll probably go short term if that happens, if we see a breakdown in negotiation. It's supposed to be like a 15-day pause, clock's ticking, we're on day 2 now. Things aren't looking that great for it. So it wouldn't surprise me now that we're seeing Israel behave the way they are, that perhaps this sort of it's going to head down path, I should turn from dotted into solid because it's looking a little bit more possible. But we're going to take a look at the indicator stack and just kind of see. I mean, just to look at the indicator stack, basically the algos, if you will, it still looks pretty strong, like it doesn't want to go down. So if we're just going to judge it based purely on that and ignore the news, then this really should remain a a dotted line and not be the main possibility, right? So I will turn it back to dotted line. And now you've seen how I think of things and how I treat them. And it just, the market's basically saying, okay, ceasefire still is more or less in effect, or they're hopeful for it, or what have you, right? And it could also be
Right.
that a lot of money was crammed into expecting the market to hold it up. It's always very, very possible. Are you doing like futures in this market, or what kind of futures do you trade?
I was starting to look at um, the micro S&P, but it never really pulled the trigger. I was studying the indicators and the movements and things like that, relating them to the price, but just more observation on the futures.
Okay.
Now, the indicator movements I was watching, I was applying them to options and trying to scalp here and there a little bit. Primarily, the group I'm in, they started really getting into the MACD and using crossovers to find low points for put entries. I started observing the stochastic RSI to give a kind of an earlier signal of when the MACD might cross over to, just be ready for an entry. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And then on zero DTE, some of the people in one of the channels in that group, they're using gamma exposure and oscillator matrix type stuff like that. I haven't dived into that. Mostly, I'm just using like a confirmation of 1, 3, and 5 minute trends on the MACD and momentum type stuff to make an entry either bullish or bearish, and then hop out when I either get a take profit target or it's not activating, so to speak, and it's just sitting there stalling, and then I'll just get out even on it.
Have you seen the free algo video that I made?
I've seen some of them, but I haven't watched them all, so I will.
If you look in the chat group chat, I
Okay,
threw a link to that where you just we'll send you weekly updates, all that stuff. I mean, that whole concept. It's an email capture, it's lead capture, but at the end of it is a free algo. Now,
okay,
what you're
got it.
telling me is kind of at that level. Algorithms are not some fancy thing. The word's hundreds of years old, by the way.
Hmm.
So it's just, tying your shoes is an algorithm, driving to the
Yeah,
store is an algorithm. So everybody thinks it's got to be like computers and such, right? But if you look in the bottom of the screen, you'll see in the bottom is stochastic RSI. You have another
yeah.
indicator here that's similar, and then you have the MACD.
Hmm.
And most of the algos I build, those are the foundation, in particular, this one in the middle. And I kind of don't talk about what it is all the time. I tell the members what it is, but it's a really good indicator. And I do believe price action is key. I think if you rely solely on indicators, you might end up getting hurt unless you are coding and it's profitable because you've back tested it. And there is better technology to back test coded algos, by the way, like MetaTrader 4, and there's ways to like be able to back test and it'll do it all pretty quick. And so it's not that TradingView is the only one. And the last time I did try the auto back test, it wasn't very good. But again, the problem is that I use multi-time frame analysis. Now, I found ways using their AI to kind of eliminate the technical problems that come with multi-time frame analysis. But you see, there's what, eight slots on here. On the far right is the monthly, then you got the weekly, daily, 3 hour, 30 minute, 5 minute, 1 minute, 10 second. Now, nobody trades the 10 second, or if they do, they're crackheads. I use the data on the 10 second, right? I don't trade that. I will trade the minute chart. And I know people, there are people who trade 10 second chart. Don't get me wrong. Like they're
Yeah,
usually somebody, it's all they do and they're talented and, it's like professionals. And technically I'm a professional, but you know what I mean? If you trade the 10 second,
right.
you're on something with a very, very slim spread, and
Hmm.
you're probably doing things that are a little technically beyond the normal person. So, but I wanted to make that clear because I don't want people to think I'm sitting here staring at the 10 second trying to make money on it. It's, any semi-pro trader would look at that and say you're a crackhead. The 1 minute is crackhead enough to trade. You can really only make money on that in the volatility. So I tend to trade the 5 minute. Or
Hmm.
by the way, the 1 minute's very profitable if you're doing NASDAQ futures. That's another story, right? I'm in forex. The spread's too thick for a lot of 1 minute trades. But if you are in a heavy volatility, then yeah, you can pull some money out of the forex pairs. So I combine these indicators on multiple time frames, right? So let's just say, for example, this is the weekly, the daily, I should say, and I'll say, okay, if the MACD crosses over below zero and the stochastic RSI is this way, and this other indicator is also bullish, and then that has to combine with the 3 hour hour MACD doing this, and then that has to combine with a 30-minute, whole suite doing that, which is that ribbon you see on the screen, right? So I go from
Mhm.
frame to time frame. One second. So anyway, the multi-time frame analysis is good. It can be tricky though. You have to wait for the trades to be very obvious because your signals will appear and disappear, right? So, your 3 hour indicator might wag. It might go to where it's qualified for the trade, condition is met, and then something happens, price moves, and it's no longer qualified. So your signal is gone. So what I tend to do with these signals that are multi-time frame is I wait until the candle closes before I trust that signal, right? Because that just gives you a stronger signal. So if you're kind of in the world of I'm waiting for the MACD to cross, like that's very elementary use of indicators. The the world of indicator trading is just so much better than that.
Mhm.
Like this whole suite, right? You'd think like, oh, well, if it's red, I go short. If it's green, I go long. Well, no, that's not the way to trade. But you can combine, say, my indicator, that red one, say, okay, well, if that's red, when the whole suite is red, I can get some profit out of that, right? And then I just go to a lower time frame and I manage the trade differently. So I mean that's an algo. Is it a good one? I don't know. I haven't tested that. I don't use the whole suite a whole lot. To be honest, although I've been using it more lately, but I mean, it seems like it's a good algo, right? On the screen, it looks darn good. This red whole
Right.
suite tab go down. I mean, that might be a legit algo for me to go trade. This is probably a loser on this one here. But then again, that's not a trade. Green hole, red tab. You'd want to take it, but it's not a trade. This one here, little profit to make, but not that much. But it's technically you probably wouldn't lose the trade, or if you did, you wouldn't lose a lot. Can't take that trade. Cannot take this trade. Can take that trade. Not a very good trade. Can take this trade. Not a loser. So yeah, it's not that idea, that algo idea that I just had doesn't look that great overall. Like there's a lot of trades that are just not very good. So I probably wouldn't do that. And a lot of it happens in the chop. So what I could do is limit that algorithm to where it's no longer in the chop. Well, how do you automate that? Because you're just looking at the chop. Well, then you have to use something like a volatility, like an ADX, average directional index. And that's an indicator that if it's above 20 or 25, then you have volatility and you can take this trade probably. And if it's below 20 or 25, then you don't have volatility and you're just going to get jacked on each of these trades. And then you make that a filter. And so that's that's what I do. And I've done it for a while. And I've done it for so long that I kind of have an understanding of like what works and what doesn't. And, just a
Mhm.
lot of practice, especially on TradingView. So yeah, I hear somebody saying like, oh, if the MACD is going to cross, then it's like, okay, I was there in, 2016, 2017. I was talking about I was looking for that MACD cross, but you could really, rocket up your trading experience by understanding how to do that understanding how to do that properly. I would say though, that a lot of people stay with indicators and they ignore all of the price action, and that's a big mistake. Whenever I actually map out what I think is going to happen, when I say, oh, I think this is going to go down, right? This move down that I predicted, I predicted in kind of like late January to happen in late March when it finally happened a couple weeks ago. I mean, a lot of that was high time frame price action and high time frame indicator stack, right? So, I don't believe in just like one way of doing things. I think every tool has its place, is what I'm trying to say. Like, so whatever tools you're using right now, you'll be able to have in your quiver for any kind of trading that you would consider later. So I'm used to having like more questions. It's hard to just keep talking about crap. And it's like and I have had no sleep and over caffeinated. That said, I think for the markets, for the general stock market, it's really going to have to do with the way the Middle East behaves in the next few days. Like the bombs being dropped in Iran, the U.S. is saying we're not doing it. They're just saying it's Israel, or
Yeah.
it might be like Saudi Arabia retaliating, or UAE also. So it's kind
Mhm.
of how do you know, how do you prove it, sort of thing. But in the
Yeah.
end, it's a wait and see, right? It's like, okay, if you're going to trade markets, just understand that, like, let's just say for whatever reason on yesterday's trade with the euro that I won, and I obviously called correctly. What if I actually had looked for price to go up to this resistance and I wanted to short it, right? And I just had an order ready to go like this, right? I was going to catch a short. Well, and then Trump's announcement happened, triggers my order and stops me out. So
Hmm.
the current market is such that you got to be ready for, things to happen that might not be to plan, and that is
Right.
always the case. It's always the case that things may not go to plan, but especially right now.
And
So
you almost, I mean, just looking way in the future, any future back testing, you'd almost have to clip this time period out because nothing's based on anything to do with market, it seems like.
uh
I,
no,
I won't say nothing, but
I'd say it's still actually I don't mean to like say you're wrong. You're right in a sense. Like there is a lot of price movement in this time that will make back testing hard to do. Certainly, like there's an unpredictability that is going on right now. But if you zoom out, the market's behaving pretty normally, and this is why I was able to call. This is the like with the Nasdaq. It's just doing the same thing it always does. It makes a high, drops down, jumps off a prior resistance, jumps up, makes a high, drops down. Didn't quite make it to this resistance. It almost did, but it looks like it got front ran and it got pushed up. So it may actually
mm,
come back down at some point. But even back here, if you look back here, the Nasdaq going back to like 2018, it made a high, dumped down, came back up, bounced off that high. It's pretty predictable overall. It's not always going to do the same thing, but the right now, if you zoom out, it doesn't seem to be behaving any differently than normal. And there's a lot of, how do you say this? There's a lot of money moving in a strange way, conflict and whatnot.
hmm.
There's a lot of people going to cash. And depending on how bad like the conflict is, if the conflict gets bad, you see people going to the dollar. And if the conflict is not as bad, but people think it's coming or people think that there's going to be like a crash or something, they go to their own native currency. So you've seen like the euro in particular, the entirety of 2025, the euro spiked up hard because basically Trump got in and they're concerned with what he was going to do with the tariffs and basically, eliminating a certain foreign influence from our sphere. Of course, he brought in another foreign influence so that, it is what it is. But that said, a lot of the Europeans' money went straight to the euro and into their market. For a while, the DAX, which is the German stock market over there, which is kind of the primary, for industrial stuff, that was outperforming the Dow for a bit. But then now you're starting to see that turn around. So that's,
Yeah,
to see a big turn and the dollar's getting stronger. Well, the dollar tends to get stronger when people think major war is afoot. Because in the US, wars haven't really reached us as of yet in the past, right? Historically, the wars haven't been reaching us.
right.
So, that may change. But I don't know. The world sees America as a stable country, as a stable, large, like superpower, right? So anyway, yeah, big rant today. Again, just trying to give information. So if you have any questions, just kind of ping me whenever. I know I'm not in the options market, but if you're looking for an idea of, what's going on, or we do these every 2 weeks. So next week, no. Following Wednesday, yes. So feel free to come on back but just ping me in the back, whatever, in the DMs if you have any questions. And feel free to watch that video, that link I sent you, for the just to see how an algo is built, right? It's like really simple. In
Okay.
fact, here's another one. This is the last week's, did you watch last week's Brotherhood video that I did?
No, I did not.
I built an algo in there too,
Okay.
for Larry. I'll throw that in there.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for coming, Ken.
Whoops. Sorry.
I,
I
I,
started that link that you sent me.
oh, it's all good.
So let me grab this other one before you shut down.
No problem.
Okay. Thanks, brother.
Anytime, man. Hope to see you again.
Likewise. Take care.
See ya.